when you think about authentic human connections, what does that mean or look like? And you've mentioned, in the book that we've kind of lost our way around this a little bit. I'd love to hear a
Yeah.
little bit about your thoughts around that.
Yeah. So for me, authentic human connection is, you know, bringing your full humanity to work, right? Like not hiding parts of yourself, not covering parts of yourself, not, checking your emotions at the door, because emotions are very human. But for a long time, many of us were taught that emotions had no place in the workplace. And those things are they're not possible, right? We are who we are. We're human beings, and we should celebrate that. And we should bring that forward because it makes us all better. And so authentic human connection is taking the time to not only let people know who you are, but invest in getting to know them.
So our topic today is something that my guest, Jenn Fischer, mentioned towards the end of the conversation. She said, we've been out of the relationship game for almost a year now. And so the conversation is really going to be about how do we build healthier, authentic connections and relationships at work, partly as we move back into the office and we're interacting with coworkers, but also partly out how do we do that leveraging technology, because that's also been a big challenge for us. Jenn Fischer is the Chief Wellbeing Officer for Deloitte US. She's had this title for 6 years. It's kind of a unique role, but it's one that she's got a kind of a personal story around, which she shares about being a consultant in Deloitte and really encountering some burnout, and then them allowing her to have this role to really support the organization. And she just most recently launched her first book, Work Better Together. It's a great book, and it's one that we're going to spend some time on the show today talking about. So I want you to listen real close to some of Jenn's tips on how we can leverage technology to continue to build relationships, because if you're like a lot of the folks I talk to, that's one of the biggest challenges that we're having and will still continue to have. So enjoy the show and stay tuned to the end for my notes.
The Workplace Therapist Show is sponsored by the Leadership Foundry. The Leadership Foundry brings a cutting-edge, real-world approach to leadership development. The Leadership Foundry partners with each client organization to create a custom-tailored experience, virtual or in person, that combines innovative leadership content, world-class facilitators, and one-on-one coaching to ensure your leaders have everything they need to grow and thrive. To find out more and to design your one-of-a-kind program, visit myleadershipfoundry.com.
Jenn, I am so excited to have you on the show today. I'm so excited to talk about how we can improve our relationships at work, building healthier relationships at work, and even building a healthier work environment. I think there's so many different paths that we can go down in this discussion today. But before we get started, for my listeners, tell us a little bit about you. What's your kind of current role today? Because I know it's a little bit unique. And then how did you happen to get into this?
Yeah, it's well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited about the conversation today. And your question about me and my role is one that I get quite often. And so my role is currently as the Chief Wellbeing Officer for Deloitte in the US. And like I said, I often get that question, what is a Chief Wellbeing Officer, and how'd you get that cool title? And so I will say it's a cool title and it's a cool role. It is incredibly rewarding. And how I got it is a bit of a kind of twisted journey, I guess, as you would expect. But I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version of it, in that about 6.5 years ago, I found myself really in a complete state of burnout. So much so that, I had really gotten to the point of not being able to get out of bed and engage in life and work in any meaningful way. And anybody that has experienced burnout probably knows what I'm talking about, because it's like the frog in the boiling pot, right? Like it's not something that happens from one day to the next. It really does sneak up on you, because it just, it continues to build over time. And so I was forced to take time off. I had to step back. I had to get myself well, not just physically, but also mentally, because along with the burnout came, some depression and anxiety and struggles with my mental health. And so I really had to step back, take time, and for myself, redefine the role that I wanted work to play in my life, and really what I wanted my life to be. Who did I want to be? What did I value? What did I want that to look like? And what did well-being look like in my life? Because I had really prided myself on being somebody who was really healthy. And I defined healthy as getting to the gym for an hour a day. And that sometimes meant that I slept for 2, 3, 4 hours, right? And so I had to completely rethink what well-being meant to me. And in doing all of that work for myself, I became very passionate about wanting to help others not get where I got. And I, was following Arianna Huffington and others at the time. And, she has always been a proponent of saying that, burnout is not the price we pay for success. And that just really resonated with me because I had just accepted that, like, this was the way that it had to be. Like, if you wanted to be successful, like, it's a burn and churn world and you just got to suck it up.
Yeah.
And then I burned out and I was like, okay, no, it's not going to be this way. It can't be this way. And so I wanted to really start to help people, understand that you can have a meaningful career as part of your overall life. It's not an either or. It's not a work-life balance, because it's never balanced. And when I was trying to balance it, I always felt like a failure because it was never balanced. Right. And so really changing the paradigm and the mindset and helping others. And so I was actually going to resign from Deloitte because there wasn't a role like what I was thinking of in my head. But I had an incredible mentor and leader at the time. And I went to her to resign and she was like, no, you're not resigning. And I was like, okay, what? And she was like, if you need this, then why doesn't everybody else need it? So go back to where you came from, put together your business case, and start to meet with leadership in the organization. And so that's what I did. And I got really strong buy-in, and there was a really deep understanding and appreciation for an organization like Deloitte, which, look, I recognize most people don't think of an organization like Deloitte as, a really, a place that, really celebrates well-being, but it is because we recognize that we're a high-performing culture. We expect a lot of our people. And in order to have, high-performing people who are facing off with the marketplace every single day, helping solve clients' most complex problems every single day, we're sub-optimizing our business if we don't have people that are well. So It's a business imperative for us to have people that are well. So that's been the journey that I've been on. So it's a little bit of a conversion of my personal life with my business life. But I think it's turned out well for all so far.
Yeah. So how long have you been in this role?
About 6 years. I think I just had my 6-year anniversary in this role.
Congratulations. That's really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting, because so you went from serving clients to now, your organization became your client, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And caring for people and trying to help kind of be the proponent for well-being. So, gosh, wow, there's a lot we can talk about. Okay, well, I also want to make sure that give an important nod to your book just that recently came out, Work Better Together. What prompted you to write this book?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So my co-author and I, so we talk about this in the book, and there's just been, I guess, several pivotal moments throughout both of our careers that have really kind of highlighted to us the importance of relationships at work. And, it's funny to kind of say relationships at work out loud, right? Because I think for a long time, and there's still, a debate about, should you have friends at work? Shouldn't you have friends at work? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And people have different comfort levels and different points of view. And we kind of get into some of those myths and facts in the book. But both of us also share personal stories and anecdotes. And I think for me, before I became the chief well-being officer, I've been at Deloitte for a long time. And, part of, I think, what led to my burnout was, my own work style, obviously, and my leadership style. I was a taskmaster. I was a churn and burn. I was like, get it done. I was like, don't stop until it's done, and then let's move on to the next task. And I had a colleague that worked for me, and she came to me and she was like, you are a great leader. You are somebody that I have learned so much from, but I'm taking another role in the organization. I can't continue to work for you, but you and I will always have a relationship. And, in that moment when that happened, of course, my reaction wasn't, unfortunately, one of self-reflection. Like, what can I do to be a better leader? It was, what can I do to protect my ego, right? And so it was, okay, well, there, this job is just too fast paced for her. It's not the right time for her in her life. It's not, but then kind of over the years, as I became more self-aware and started to really define well-being and understand what my own needs from the workplace and workplace relationships were, it was about 2 years later, maybe 18 months later, that I really had this kind of light bulb aha moment where I was like, the reason, and you hear a lot, people don't leave organizations. An organization is an inanimate thing. They leave like leave managers, bad managers, and as I started to kind of learn more and research this, and we talk a lot about this in the book, I was like, holy cow, like this was me, right? Like, and it just became very clear to me. That conversation kind of kept coming back up in my head, that the reason she left was not because the work was hard, not because it was fast paced, but I, as her manager and her leader, hadn't really invested in my relationship with her. I didn't really take the time to understand who she was, to understand what her strengths were, to understand what made her tick, what her home life was, what her preferred style of working was. I just said, we're all here to do a job, so let's get it done. I was that taskmaster. And so I had that light bulb moment where I was like, oh my gosh, now I know why she left. And I actually reached out to her. I sent her a message because she was still with the firm at the time. And I said, I just want you to know that you said this to me. I don't even know if you remember it. And I know it's been like 18 months or 2 years, but I still remember it. And it's had this impact on me. And it was kind of in that moment that like everything changed for me in terms of workplace relationships and how I felt about workplace relationships, in particular, the value of them, and the importance of them and the need for them, and how we can't, as leaders or as colleagues, ignore them.
So I want to take that path and go a little further. So one of the phrases you use in the book, which we often hear in the world, is authentic human connections. You use authentic human connections, but we talk about authentic relationships and kind of that idea. Define that for us. When you think about authentic human connections, what does that mean or look like? And you've mentioned, in the book that we've kind of lost our way around this a little bit. I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts around that.
Yeah. So for me, authentic human connection is, bringing your full humanity to work, right? Like not hiding parts of yourself, not covering parts of yourself, not, checking your emotions at the door, because emotions are very human. But for a long time, many of us were taught that emotions had no place in the workplace. And those things are they're not possible, right? We are who we are. We're human beings, and we should celebrate that. And we should bring that forward because it makes us all better. And so authentic human connection is taking the time to not only let people know who you are, but invest in getting to know them. And again, this is going to look different for everybody. Everybody has different comfort levels when it comes to developing relationships in the workplace. And again, it's not about, faking, toxic positivity and having every single person you come in contact with at work be your best friend. That's not what we're saying. But having a few strong confidants, people that you can go to, people that you can trust. All the research shows that creates, a greater sense of well-being, a greater sense of connection to the organization, a greater sense of loyalty. People, don't leave organizations as often when they have a few strong connections in the workplace. Broader than that, it broadens to society and life in general. There's a huge Harvard study that's been going on for something like 83 years that we cite. It's probably not 83 years, but we cite, that basically says the number one predictor of your long-term health and happiness, your longevity, is the strength of your personal relationships. So if that's true in our life, why is that not true in our work life? Because if you're a working adult, you're spending more hours a day at work than you are in anything else in your life. Sorry, I know that's a little bit depressing, but it's true.
Oh, I get it. I'm with you 100%.
And so we have to show up and be authentic. But I think, just over time, I think with the surgence of, the way that technology has been brought into every aspect of our life. And, my co-author, Ann Phillips, she's a technology researcher. So we're not Luddites. We don't hate technology. We actually love technology, but we want people to be able to use technology to augment who we are as human beings, not take over or take place of real human connection. And we believe that that's what happened. I mean, when we're just behind a laptop every day, banging away, and living through a global pandemic has been really fascinating, right? Especially as we wrote the book, because technology was all we had to keep us connected, right? And so we were celebrating that. But pre-pandemic, I remember myself, sending an instant message or an email to someone that might have been 10 feet from me just because it was more convenient, right? And so we've lost that ability or that desire to really connect with one another. And so I think authenticity looks different for everybody, but it's showing up and celebrating our humanity and what makes us human and what makes us different from the machines and the technology that we're working with.
So here's kind of what I heard in this that I want to play back to make sure I got it right. So it sounds like, authenticity does look a little different for all of us. And what you're not necessarily proposing or recommending is that we have to build all these intimate relationships with everyone we work with, but having some trusted confidants or people that you can connect with and share with is really important. So it doesn't have to be everybody. And it also doesn't sound like it has to be everything. It's not like you have to completely open up and share every single thing that's going on in your head, but just being comfortable.
Actually, I would advise against that.
Yeah. So,
there is such a thing as oversharing, right? So, so I don't think that if it's somebody that you're very, very close to, that you have that kind of relationship with, that's great. But I'm not saying that, you should walk into a conference room and be like, hey, let me tell you everything that's ever happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
Because that would be weird and awkward for you and for them.
That's right. Well, into part of my background is clinical therapy. And, if I was to sum up therapy in at least one of the ways you sum it up, it's all about healthy boundaries. And what you're saying is, you build these relationships with healthy boundaries, healthy guardrails that respect the professional nature of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And I think absolutely. And the other thing is, a few trusted confidants is great. And the other thing that we do talk about is kind of workplace culture and decoding workplace culture and kind of understanding the culture that you're working in, right? Is it a school of sharks? Is it, a group of lone leopards? Is it, so we kind of give it a fun, we give it, some mascots and where we recommend or where we believe, people and organizations thrive is in, organizations that not only value, well-being, but value relationships. And we call that trusted teams. The mascot is a dolphin for those of you that are interested. So you can have a few trusted confidants, but it's also about the culture and the environment, right? The way that we operate with one another, the way that we support one another, the way that we share information with one another. Do we hoard information? Are we sole performers without any, regard for the rest of the people on our team? And so what are the behaviors that create a psychologically safe and a trusted environment at work so that everybody can feel, safe and productive and well? And we also talk about I talked about this a little bit in my opening, right? Is when your employees, when your workforce is well, it tends to, it's a ripple effect, right? When I'm cranky and, haven't slept well, I'm sleep deprived, I'm not eating well, I'm not getting any movement or exercise, I'm not connecting or doing the things in my life that make me happy or bring me joy, I typically don't show up at work as a very nice person. I mean, as a matter of fact, you talk to anybody on my team pre-pandemic, when we used to travel, if we were out to dinner, they were like, Jen, it's getting close to your bed. I mean, they would literally send me to bed because they know what it's like to work with a Jen that's not well rested. Right. And we
Yeah.
joke about it, but it's true. And so, when you're well, you show up better. Your ability to be authentic, your ability to connect with others, right?
Yeah.
And not take things, you're able to really manage and kind of, think about your emotions and not react or overreact, right? And so all of those things are tied to your own personal well-being, and they impact the way that you show up in the workplace and how you can connect with others and build those relationships.
So I want to take a little microcosm of that story, and I want to pivot it a little bit to get your help.
Okay.
So you talked about you working with folks, and they would know, oh my gosh, Jen's getting a little cranky. She may be hangry. Time for her to go to bed, right? Because they're working with you all day long. Right? They're right next to you. Now let's think about the last 12 months. And how many folks have we talked to who have said, yeah, I started with this new employer. I've still never met my manager or coworkers. It's all virtual. And as we're looking into the future, your crystal ball probably looks a lot like mine. It's going to be a lot of hybrid work where some folks are going to be working virtually. Some are going to be at client sites or in the office, but it's going to be not like it was before. So here's my question. How do we build those kinds of close connected relationships where people can tell when you're getting tired, when we're just got these laptop screens and we're looking at each other? How do we leverage technology to go where you want us to go?
So it absolutely can be done. It does take a little bit more effort because I think for those of us that were used to working in an office pre-pandemic, I think what we realized pretty early on is beyond video fatigue, what people were really missing was kind of those serendipitous interactions, those interactions that happened when we passed each other in the hallway, before a meeting started, after a meeting ended, kind of those unplanned interactions. In a virtual or hybrid world, we're going to have to, number one, design our day to allow for those interactions and to be intentional about them. We can't leave them to serendipity. We can't leave them to chance, right? And so it's going to happen. I mean, we're going to have to start to work differently, and relationship development is going to have to be a little bit more intentional. That doesn't mean contrived. That means intentional, right? So it's not like, oh, I'm going to put time on the calendar and like have a weird, awkward relation or have a weird, awkward conversation with somebody because I'm supposed to be developing a relationship with them, right? That's not what I'm saying. But we do have to be intentional about, scheduling time, scheduling, opportunities for people to talk, to engage, to get to know one another when you're not talking about work, right? And there's a lot of creative ways to do that. We talk about that in the book, but intentionality, I think, is kind of the word of the year or the 2 years, right? I mean, we're gonna have to really design our day, and what we talk about is designing work for well-being. And when you design work for well-being, relationship development is part of well-being. And so it becomes part of the equation when you think about, okay, well, how do I design, or how do I help my employees design their work for well-being?
Yeah, I love that. So I want people to buy a copy of the book. So I don't want to spill all the beans and have people have you share all the creative ideas, but I would like you to share at least one, because so often I have folks say, well, how do I do this? Do I read like a script of questions to my employee to learn more about them? I mean, what are some ways we can have it not feel so awkward and feel smoother?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways. I mean, I think there's a lot of creative things that you can do at the start and end of meetings, right? The way that you start and the way that you end meetings. I'm a big proponent of, and I said it before, emotions in the workplace. And in particular, over the past 15, 16 months or so with the pandemic and creating a psychologically safe space. So one of the practices that I've done that I actually learned from Brené Brown, who is one of my personal heroes, is at the beginning of a meeting, allow people to come into the meeting, give them, we kind of do a moment to arrive exercise, which is a mindfulness exercise, but then having people put into the chat, hey, what are 2 emotions that you're feeling today? And you don't need to give me a reason why, just put them in the chat, and it gives everybody on the team kind of and me as the leader, a sense of where everybody's coming from. It gives people permission to show up and say, you know what, I'm not really feeling that great today. And that's okay. But also as a colleague and as a leader, if somebody puts something in the chat that you want to follow up on later, to say, hey, I saw that you said you were feeling really excited and hopeful. Like, what's going on in your life? Share with me. Or maybe you said you were feeling frustrated and, really down, or, like frustrated and depressed. As a leader, that gives me an opportunity to then follow up and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? How can I support you? What do you need? And that's, so that's a simple way to connect. That's an exercise that I love. I mean, we've been hearing a lot about, virtual team building activities, and there's a ton, but I think simple things like, hey, I read, sending an email, or if you use a collaboration platform, I read this article that I found really interesting. Let me tell you what I thought about it. I'd love to know what you think about it, right? So I'm sharing something about me, something that I found interesting. Here's a podcast that I love listening to. I thought you might be interested in it, or having a team listen to a podcast. And then have a conversation about it. Hey, what'd you get out of it? What'd you learn from it? Having a team read a book, like team book club. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of ways that, you can, you just have to be a little bit creative. And, I think in the hybrid world, we're still learning. We don't know what we don't know, what that's going to be like. I do think that we're going to have to really think differently about the way that we work and the way that we schedule meetings. What we've heard in a virtual world is, for those of us that have been able to work from home, recognizing that there's a lot of people that were out during the pandemic because they had to be, and we needed them to be, thank goodness for them, right?
Yeah.
But, we went back to back to back to back, right? Like, I mean, we just tried to replicate an in-person day doing it virtually, and it doesn't work that way. And so I think in a hybrid world, we're going to learn yet again, and we're going to have to adapt yet again. We're going to have to rethink meetings. Technology, we've talked about technology. One of the great things about technology is it's really easy to invite everybody to a meeting. One of the terrible things about technology is that it's really easy to invite everyone to a meeting.
Yeah.
And when you invite everyone to a meeting, everyone feels like they need to be at the meeting because we all have FOMO. We just do. Like, that's the world that we lived in. Technology has created that, right? So we need to start thinking about, like, okay, who really needs to be in a meeting? What makes the meeting productive? Can we share a recording or a readout, or action items after, for the people that need to know but that don't necessarily need to be at the meeting? And we need to start giving each other permission to set boundaries, to take time off, all of those things. And so we're going to have to really think about work differently, even different. I mean, we adapted to a virtual world. We adapted well in some regards and not well in other regards. And so I think we're still learning. But the hybrid world is going to present yet another challenge, because it is going to be, I mean, think about if you're the person that's virtual and there's a whole bunch of people in a conference room, right? Like, we've all had that experience probably. Like, you definitely feel like the outsider. So
Right.
How do we overcome that?
Yeah, this is great. So Jenn, we're already getting close to time here. So I ask all my guests this closing question. Is there one life hack you have for us on how we can either have better conversations or build healthier relationships, either at work or at home?
Can I give you two?
Yes.
They're both really quick. Okay.
Yep.
So first and foremost, get enough sleep.
Okay.
Sleep is the foundation for everything, and it impacts how you show up in every relationship in your life, or not. And then the second, of course, is read Work Better Together. I mean, we outline all of this. So order your copy today.
That's great. And so speaking of that, if people want to learn more about you, follow you, buy a copy of this book, where can they go?
Absolutely. So learn more about me, follow me. I am on Twitter and Instagram at JennFish23. I'm on LinkedIn at Jenn Fischer. You can just search me there. And then in order to get the book, and any of your retailers should have it or be able to order it for you. Of course, the easiest way probably to get it is through Amazon. It's available now. It's in ebook and in hard copy book, whatever your preference is.
Fantastic. Jenn, thank you so much. This is great. It's all stuff that we need. And it's helpful as we're trying to move out of 2020 plus into 2021 and beyond. So really, it couldn't be more timely. So thanks for all your guidance and wisdom today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. So I've got my notes, as I typically do. I'm going to go through them. Instead of kind of going through all the nuggets of Jenn's conversation with me, I'm going to highlight a few of the points that really stood out the most. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is her idea of authentic human connection. I asked her about that. What does it really mean to have an authentic human connection? And how do we do that? And I think she made a really important point for us. She said, you don't have to do that in a scripted way. It's going to look different for everybody. You don't need to be sharing everything that's going on in your head with everybody. And you don't have to do it with everyone. You really only just need a handful of confidants, maybe 2 or 3 people that you can build a deeper relationship at work, because that's going to have you feel more connected and more supported. And I think that's so very, very true. The second thing that really stood out for me was she talked about how we can use technology to further this idea of authentic connection. And she said, before it was all the serendipitous interactions, bump into somebody in the hallway, grab coffee, grab drinks after work, whatever happens to be. She said, you can't do that anymore. So you have to be a little more intentional. You got to plan it a little bit more. And I asked her, well, what would be some great kind of tips and tricks for us? And she gave a couple good nuggets. She said, have people open up a meeting and go into the chat and just share 2 emotions that they're feeling. You don't have to spend any time talking about it, but it just allows you to see where people are and how they show up. She talked about having either a team podcast or a book club, where you share a podcast and have everyone talk about it, or a book and everyone reads it or listens to it and talks about it. This would be a great podcast for that, everyone, by the way. And then last, we talked about making sure that, we are caring for ourselves, we're getting sleep, and we're setting proper boundaries, because part of where I think we've all screwed up in the last year is we've allowed ourselves to overwork. We've started meetings at 7:30 or 8 in the morning, going all the way to 7 at night because we could. So setting healthy boundaries is going to be really, really important. So I encourage you to buy a copy of her book. It's Work Better Together. You can buy it on Amazon, as she mentioned. And there's a lot more good tips and tricks in there as well. But I've got a few just from my conversation with her that I'm going to start putting in play tomorrow.
Hey everyone, it's Aaron Smith, Assistant to the Creative Director and Junior Workplace Therapist. I wanted to take a minute to say thank you to all of those of you who have left a comment or review for the podcast. It means so much and gives us great feedback about how we can improve the show, so we can bring you great content to help you in your daily life at work and beyond. This summer, we're on a quest to grow our number of reviews so that way we can climb the podcast ladder. In order to entice you to write one, we're giving away an Amazon gift card after every episode this summer. So please, write a review, leave us some stars, and if we choose yours to read on the podcast, we'll send you an Amazon gift card. Who doesn't want something fun from Amazon? Just in case you're wondering what to write, here's a great example from JLA, who left us 5 stars and wrote, "Relevant and witty. Brandon offers positive and pragmatic solutions to life at work. His approach allows for easy application to common workplace dynamics in ways that produce growth and efficiency and satisfaction." Thanks for a great review, JLA, and thank you for listening.